They wanted the Tabitha character to be kind of a major part of the show, so they decided to recast, and that's where I was brought in. And it would sometimes take an hour for the toy to get from the shelf to me in the crib. So that was definitely TV magic. And she would just move her mouth back and forth, and they would film it at a slow speed and play it back at a fast speed. She was one of those people who is so truly beautiful, but wasn't afraid to look silly or unattractive. I think the only person who knew it wasn't coming back was Liz Montgomery, since it was her decision. I don't think there's been a year since we went off the air that there hasn't been some buzz about redoing Bewitched in one format or the other. People have conceptions of what an actor, and specifically a child actor, is like. So I go out of the way to prove that misconception wrong.
Erin Murphy, you know, the first time we sat down for a TV chat in Los Angeles, you channeled your Tabitha from Bewitched, and bing, 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 magically, a glass of champagne popped into my hand.
It happens. It's one of the perks of being a TV witch.
Bewitched, I can't believe 61 years. By God, doesn't time go like that?
It's kind of crazy. I mean, it's, a huge part of my life, obviously, but I'm as surprised as anybody. I was actually on the issue of TV Guide this week featuring Bewitched.
You were almost two, though, when you landed the role of Tabitha Stephens, joining the show in 1966. Is this true? The role was created because in real life, Elizabeth Montgomery was pregnant?
Yes, she was pregnant with her second son. And as a coincidence, I'm the same age as her first son. But she was pregnant with her son, Robert, and they decided it was the perfect time for Darren and Samantha to have a baby as well.
You were 11 months old when you did your first TV commercial. Is this true? You were discovered in your stroller in Los Angeles.
Yes, that's partially true. Since I have a fraternal twin sister, my mom had one of those big double strollers,
Mm.
and everywhere they would take us, people would approach, directors and producers and casting directors, say, "Oh my goodness, you have twin babies and they're beautiful, and you should get them into television." So I think they were approached enough times that they thought, okay, let's give it a try. So yes, and it was successful very early on.
So you're 11 months old when you made your first TV commercial. Do you remember which commercial that was?
I don't remember shooting the commercial because I was literally a baby, but it was for Folgers coffee, so I do remember.
Then you got to do a commercial with Ronald Reagan, of course, the Hollywood legend who went on to become president.
That's right. Before he was the governor of California, he was the spokesperson for Borateam detergent. So I did a commercial with him before Bewitched. It was either my second or third commercial.
So Bewitched had been on air for 2 years before you were cast as Tabitha Stephens. Do you have any recollection of what that casting process was like?
I don't remember the actual audition process. It was before I was 2, so I was about 1.5. And they had used, I think, 6 different babies in season 2. So season 1 was Darren and Samantha falling in love, getting married. Season 2 was them having a baby. Season 3 was the year that we went to color, and they decided that they wanted the Tabitha character to be kind of a major part of the show. So they decided to recast, and that's where I was brought in.
Back then, there were laws governing how long a child could work on a set. And so you wound up sharing the gig with your sister Diane, but she was kind of seen from behind and from the side and so forth, as I understand.
Yes, we're fraternal twins, so we really don't look any more alike than sisters. And I've actually found out, I think I found this out since our first interview, what they would do some of the time is they would bring me off set and they say, okay, bring on Diane, and they would bring me right back on set. So they weren't as strong with the child labor laws. They were trying to adhere to them since there were welfare workers there on set, but they would bring me off and bring me right back. So some of those episodes, I did double duty. As long as the welfare worker didn't know, I think that was all they cared about at the time.
For those wondering, Erin, what is Diane doing now? Because I know showbiz really wasn't her thing, was it?
No, it's not for everybody. I mean, not everybody likes the lights and the camera and the attention and all that. It's a lot. And she's not like that. She's more reserved. She's, quieter than I am. And she works in medical writing. She's done that for many years, and she's very successful at it. And we're close as can be, but as different as two people could be as well.
You know, of those early Bewitched years, I know people say, gosh, Erin was so young. How could she possibly remember? But the thing is, you do have a vivid memory, and a lot of that stuff is still very clear in your mind, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I tell people, think back on your childhood, your earliest memories, and people will always say something that was very memorable. So I remember when they walked on the moon and I was 5. I remembered when we had a pink polka dotted elephant on set when I was 3. So things that are memorable, like being on a TV show, is something that you would remember.
You just referenced that polka dotted baby elephant. It brings me to this point. What kind of magic place was the set of Bewitched for a kid?
Yeah, it was definitely a fun set to work on because there was so much going on. Even, a simple episode, we'd have magic and I could watch things, kind of come to life then on TV. So it was more fun, I think, than some of the other sets.
You'd look up to the lighting grid and there'd be the guys up there with, sticks and fishing line moving things around. So it kind of, I guess, it spoiled it for you a little, didn't it?
It did a little, but it also made me appreciate magic. So I still like magicians and things like that because it's fun, kind of watching the illusions. So it was fun for me to see it in actuality, but then see the TV magic when it's on TV, where it is magical for everyone else.
You called for a toy and suddenly it would come flying over. It didn't matter that it was connected to a bit of fishing line, but it came over and landed in your hand. That must have been just so cool.
It was and it wasn't, because it wasn't like I really then had the toy to play with, and it would sometimes take an hour for the toy to get from the shelf to me in the crib. So that was definitely TV magic. I didn't then have the toy to play with.
You adored your TV mum, Elizabeth Montgomery. What was she like as a person?
She was fun. I don't know. I saw so many sides of her. So she was actively involved in the production side of the show. So I kind of saw the business person, producer, actress side. And I say this a lot, but she was one of those people who is so truly beautiful, but wasn't afraid to look silly or unattractive. Kind of like Lucille Ball before her, where Lucille Ball was a beautiful woman, but on I Love Lucy, she would make the faces and do all that. So it's kind of interesting to see that. But Liz was great, definitely.
And is this true? She loved the horse races and would often have the form guide with her there on the set.
Yes, I would say almost every day she had the racing form or whatever it's called on the set. And it was fun because I always loved animals and horses. And I also loved looking at the names and helping her pick out which one that I would bet on.
Elizabeth's nose twitch. How did she do that? I mean, I look at it from every which way, Erin, and it still is so brilliantly done.
Yeah, it there were a couple tricks to that. The number one is that it's not actually her nose, it's her mouth, like her upper lip. And she would just move her mouth back and forth, and they would film it at a slow speed and play it back at a fast speed. So there was a little camera work there, but also just try moving your lips back and forth, not your nose. That's it. You're doing it.
I know when you started, you used to go like that, which I thought was absolutely so cute. And then it became that. Who came up with the idea of wiggling your fingers instead of kind of pushing your nose around your face?
I would assume that it was Bill Asher, our producer, and it was just one of those things where we came back after our season hiatus, which is the break, came back and they said, now you're going to do this. So it was just a new thing. And I said, okay. And then we never did the nose twitch again.
Became your signature, didn't it? Thinking about
I,
it.
I would say it didn't, because people still ask me to twitch my nose. Very few people ask me to go like this.
Darren Stevens, of course, your TV dad character, played by two actors. First of all, was Dick York, who suffered serious pain issues. I think he'd hurt himself in a movie or something previous. Is that right?
Yes, it was a movie that I've never seen called They Came to Cordura. And they were filming a scene where they had one of those old railway cars, the ones where you kind of go like this, one person on each side. And when they were done filming, they said cut, and everyone let go of the car except for Dick York. So it just wrenched his back and caused him to have a deteriorating spine and all sorts of pain and issues, through for the rest of his life.
I read where he had to be on like a board between scenes because his back was in such crippling agony.
Yes, they had a board that would lean, so it was kind of a leaning board because it was too painful for him to sit down and stand up, so he kind of leaned way back on a board in between scenes.
You get the sense he was just so warm and kind of really like a kind of surrogate dad to you.
Absolutely. He was very warm, very philanthropic, so active in community service and volunteering, and also a father. And he was a great guy.
And only 63 when he passed away. I think it was emphysema took him, and anybody who knows anything about his life will recognize how brave he was toward the end, because he turned his pain into a purpose to point out the evils of smoking. It must have really knocked you around when he passed away.
Yeah, it was tough. It was one of those things I don't know that we've ever talked about where all three of the characters who played my TV parents passed away within just a few years of each other. So I mean, it was kind of a shocking time, and they were all too young when they passed. I think Elizabeth was 62 or 63 as well. She was very young when she passed.
Dick Sargent, of course, and he could have been the original Darren, but he turned it down. And then when Dick York became too incapacitated to work, he wound up taking on that role of Darren Stevens. Did you remain in touch with Dick Sargent when the show finished?
I did. There was a time where we would send Christmas cards. I was a small child, so it was mainly communication through my parents. But then as an adult, we kind of did the talk show circuit together, and we were definitely in contact and seeing each other.
1991, he was hailed as brave for coming out when people just didn't do that. And I know that Elizabeth Montgomery was very much in his corner about that. And I think the reason that Dick decided that, he just basically wanted to be his authentic self was because he was so horrified by the suicide rate among closeted gay people. Am I right in that being the reason?
Yeah, I don't know if that was kind of the catalyst for him to come out, but I think it was the time when people were starting to feel more comfortable, and I think it was such an important step for people who were and are in the public eye to kind of come forward. So I was proud of him at the time, and I don't know what his reason was, and it certainly isn't anything I would have asked. I just always gave my support.
Agnes Moorehead, you absolutely adored. She, of course, was TV's queen of meddling mother-in-laws, Endora. Why was she so fabulous?
Oh my goodness. I don't know why she was so fabulous. She just was. She was, oh my goodness, beautiful and smart and just an amazing actress and loving and just a kind of spectacular human. I don't know why she was or how she was. I'm just glad she was.
I got to say, she nailed that character to absolute precision, but she was nothing like that as a person, was she?
No, she was sweet as can be. It's funny because occasionally I'll see an interview where she does seem a little bit grouchy, and I think, "Oh, wow, I didn't see that side of her so much." But no, she was just a loving, wonderful woman, and would, I'm sure we've said this, but would draw me little pictures and tell me stories, and I loved her like a grandma. Definitely.
I think that Agnes died, what, about 2 years after Bewitched finished?
Yes, it was just a couple years after. And we talked because she'd always talked about having an acting school and that she taught fencing there. And I loved the idea of that. And she explained that it was so important. And I don't know if they still teach that in drama, like Shakespeare courses and things, but it was all about the give and take of fencing, and that it really helps actors with their dialogue, and that it was such an important thing. And I was so excited that when I was older, she said she would teach me fencing. And unfortunately, she passed away before I was old enough.
George Tobias, of course, is poor henpecked Abner Kravitz. What are your memories of working with George?
It's interesting because of the cast and crew, I have fewer memories of him. And I don't know if it's because we didn't do as many scenes together. And I never saw him after the show went off the air. So I obviously appreciate his acting, and I thought he was perfect for the part, but I don't have as many memories of him, where I have so many of Sandy Gould, who played Gladys Kravitz.
Yeah, so tell us a little about that, because she was the second Gladys Kravitz, wasn't she?
Yes, and she started When I started. So she came on the show at the beginning of the third season since Alice Pierce had cancer and passed away. So she came on. So she's the only Gladys Kravitz I know. I've actually never watched the black and white episodes of Bewitched. So I have never seen Alice Pierce's Gladys Kravitz. Obviously in photos and maybe a clip here and there if I'm doing a TV show, but I've never seen a full episode. So Sandra Gould is Gladys Kravitz to me. But we definitely stayed in contact at the end, and she was obsessed with the idea that I should be a TV star. She truly obsessed with it. And at the time, I was, I had young children and I just wasn't ready to kind of resume acting. But before she passed, she would tell anyone who would listen that I was the next Heather Locklear. And I appreciate that very much.
David White, of course, as Larry Tate, who was your dad's boss on the show. What was he like?
To me, he was like Larry Tate. He was in many, many episodes. So I think he was there in probably every episode or almost every episode I was in. But our scenes weren't always together. So what I would be sitting in my chair and watch them in the office scenes and things like that. And I liked him very much, but he also passed away shortly after the show.
And another one who was just so memorable, Marion Lawn, of course, as Aunt Clara, who got everything kind of befuddled. She was just so adorable to watch.
According to Liz Montgomery, she was very much like her character. That half the challenge in the scenes was kind of getting Marion from one place to the other, like where she needed to be.
Bernard Fox, of course, as Dr. Bombay.
Yeah, oh, he was wonderful. He and I spent so much. I mean, maybe of the remaining cast, we might have spent the most time together because we traveled together for things like they did a statue in Salem, Massachusetts. The TV Land Network put up a statue of Samantha. So he and I were there together. We were in New York together on talk show appearances. We did the Howard Stern show together. And, I would kind of help him travel. And I think people would frequently think I was his much younger wife when we would be out to dinner together. But he was a hilarious man. He had some of the best stories ever.
Because he had one of those wonderfully long Hollywood careers where he was kind of in everything, wasn't he, over the decades?
He was in the original Titanic film that wasn't called Titanic. I think it was called A Night to Remember. And then he had the kind of resurgence where he was a prominent character in the Titanic film with Leonardo DiCaprio. So that was kind of an exciting career thing for him.
Then there was the adorable Alice Ghostley as Esmeralda, and I know you two got on like a house on fire.
We did. And she was there and brought in not as a replacement to Marion Lorne exactly, but kind of another bumbling witch character. So after Marion passed away, then they brought in Alice Ghostley, and she was perfect for the part.
Bewitched was a ratings juggernaut, and it ended in 1972. And as I understand it, you guys had no idea it was ending. It had apparently been signed on for another 2 seasons.
I know it was definitely signed on for 2 seasons. I've heard from others that it was actually picked up for 3 seasons. But we went on our hiatus little break thinking we were coming back, and we all got telegrams and phone calls and letters, and that's how we found out. So I think the only person who knew it wasn't coming back was Liz Montgomery, since it was her decision.
I'd heard that she and her husband, William Asher, who created the show and was such a driving force behind it, they'd quietly split, and so that's why it was decided the show wouldn't continue.
I'm laughing because it wasn't so quiet. They definitely split. Yeah, it was a pretty loud split.
Look, her passing from cancer 1995, how did that affect you?
It was difficult, and one of the things that's probably made it more difficult is before she passed away, I think out of respect to the family, all the media outlets reached out to me that they were putting together her obituaries, her in memoriams, weeks leading up to her passing away. So I mean, and that part was very difficult. But she was much too young. I'm going to be 62 next year, so the thought of that is just crazy.
Did you know she was ill, Erin? Did you have any inkling? Did she confide in you, or did you kind of read about it as everybody else did?
Yeah, I'd heard about it through her son that she wasn't feeling well. She'd been working on a film and just wasn't feeling well, but I certainly didn't know how sick she was.
You now, of course, one of the last surviving Witch stars. I know the twins, David and it's Greg Mandel. They shared the role of your TV brother Adam. They're still very much about.
I see them not often, but occasionally they'll do these get together events and they'll be there. And it's like we're all friends on Facebook, so I keep up with them and their families that way.
I know there was a weird twist to their life, which of course was tailor made for the National Enquirer. Naturally, they went on. I think it was Vicki Lawrence's show, and said that they were in fact Tony Curtis's illegitimate kids.
I've heard this story for many years. I There seemed to be some facts behind it, although I know there was never a paternity test done. They look a lot like Tony Curtis, but I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know. That's their story, and they definitely think it to be true, and maybe it is.
Now, after Bewitched, the guest roles started rolling in. I remember seeing you in a really great episode of Lassie. This wasn't with John Provost. It was
It was later. It was with oh gosh, Rodimus Para, who was the kid from
yes.
Kung Fu, if you remember that, and also Larry Wilcox, who went on to be on Chip. They called me casting director Lynn Stallmaster, who was a very famous casting director here in the States. Called me in. I didn't have to audition. They offered me the part, and they were hoping that it would be a spin-off. If you watch the episode at the end, my dog had been afraid of everything, and so we weren't going to be able to move to this town, my father and I. But at the end, Lassie had rescued my dog, and my dog was fearless. And then suddenly we were going to move to the same town where Lassie lived. So the talk was that it would somehow be a spinoff, but it never happened. And I never really thought there was enough to our episode for it to be a spinoff, if that makes sense. There wasn't really enough background to make it a viable spinoff in my mind.
And then I think you're about 8, and offers were rolling in. There was a fabulous role in the Waltons, and you said no. You wanted to go off and become a normal California kid, and you went on and became a cheerleader and a homecoming queen. And what was that like to dissolve back into normalcy, Erin?
I loved it. I don't know if my parents did. I loved it. The Waltons offer came when Bewitched was canceled. I was at Girl Scout camp and the call came in and the decision was made that I wanted to stay at Girl Scout camp. And then I don't know, it was a time where my sister and I had graduated from elementary school, and my family decided, okay, maybe this is the time to move away from Los Angeles. And we moved down to Orange County to a beautiful little area. And it was kind of great being a normal kid and, being a cheerleader and doing all those things. So I like that I had both sides of that childhood. I think I was always grounded. I think even when I was on Bewitched, I was enrolled in regular school. So the days that I wasn't shooting, I would go to a regular school, and I always had friends, and I always made sure they knew that I was a nice person and not, conceited because I was on TV. So I think in some ways I overcompensated, and I still think I'm a nice person. And some of it is because people have conceptions of what an actor and specifically a child actor is like. So I go out of the way to prove that misconception wrong.
And then, of course, as you pirouetted through life, you did all sorts of things. You became a casting director, you became a makeup artist. And I love this, you did some stunt work. Melissa Leo and also at one point for Virginia Madsen. Do you remember what those projects were?
I do. For Virginia Madsen, it was a film for HBO, and I did some driving stunts for her because she couldn't drive a stick shift. It was pretty simple stuff. But for Melissa Leo, I worked for, I think, 2 seasons on a series she was doing called Young Riders, and they had me do various, body double stunt things on that.
There was, of course, that Bewitched movie with Nicole Kidman and Will Ferrell. That was 20 years ago, Erin. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I think that film got a bad rap. I think people call it a failure, but it made over $100 million. How was $100 million a failure? And I thought it was sweet and lighthearted. And I like Nicole Kidman. So I stand by that film. And Kristen Chenoweth was in it. She's adorable.
And then talking about the way in which Bewitched, endeavored to live on, there was the Tabitha spin-off of 1977. It was Lisa Hartman, I think, as your character. What was your take on that particular spin-off? Did you enjoy that? Did you think it had legs?
I didn't. I never saw all of it. It was one of those shows, that's a question that people ask me very frequently is, why wasn't I Tabitha? Why didn't they use me? But when they filmed it and started it, I was 12. So the concept was that Tabitha was a grown-up. So there was never even an option that I be that part. So I don't want people to be upset with Lisa Hartman. She was great for the part, but I didn't see all the episodes. I don't know. I think they made it a little too quickly. I don't think it really carried the characters over. I mean, there were a lot of discrepancies between the characters on Bewitched and their characters on that show. So I don't know. It was considered pretty universally a flop.
I know the trades in very recent times, the Hollywood trade papers are talking about the possibility of another Tabitha spin-off. I know there is a Bewitched TV reboot now in the works at Fox. Some, Erin, say, why tinker with a winning formula?
I think the answer is in your question. Why tinker with a winning formula? Because you have a winning formula. So I think people are they have such warm feelings for nostalgia. And the Wednesday series is such a success. And there was the New Adventures of Sabrina that was a success. And I think people kind of yearn for the days of yesteryear. So this show was so popular and continues. I mean, we're still on everywhere. So it's one of those things where people love the show. They're still watching it. Their kids are still watching it. These other shows worked. Let's see if we can remake Bewitched. So I don't think there's been a year since we went off the air that there hasn't been some buzz about redoing Bewitched in one format or the other. And it sounds like maybe one of these will get off the ground. I don't know. I don't think the Tabitha one will. That was talked about a couple years ago, and I haven't heard any movement. I know the one that started at Sony now is with Fox. There's a lot of buzz, and I'm Facebook friends with the writer, who's lovely. So I think that one probably has the best chance at this point. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll believe it when it's on.
But if that phone goes and you're offered some fabulous role in the new Bewitched, would you say yes?
Of course. Of
Good
course.
girl. So you should. I know a lot of people are going to be surprised by this, Erin Murphy, but you are a proud mum to 6 boys. And not only that, but you're a grandma to how many?
5.
We've spoken about your son, Parker, previously. He's now, I'm guessing, in his 20s. Would that be right?
In his 20s now, yes.
Yeah. I know, Erin, when last we spoke about Parker, you were telling me that he was nonverbal, but in something that is almost just, it's kind of like a miracle, he was able to sing along to the songs of the Beatles.
It's true. It was kind of a family holiday miracle one year where he wasn't speaking and we were all together for the holidays. And he started singing Love Me Do by the Beatles, and he sang it start to finish. And then he sang Yellow Submarine, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. So you never know what will get through to someone with different needs or autism or, whatever the neurological issue might be. But music definitely is something that Parker loves. But at the time, we were living in Calabasas, and they had a wonderful music program where he was able to stream with a typical classroom, and they had a weighted vest that he would wear, and they were doing a program on the Beatles. So he heard the songs every day and then just started singing them.
Any of your kids in showbiz, perchance?
They're not. They all do different things. My oldest son actually is involved with designing video games. So he was working designing like virtual reality backgrounds for films, and he worked for Sony, and now he's been working on the last 2 Call of Duty games. So I guess that's close to showbiz, but he's the only one so far.
Oh, Erin, look, I've got to say, you're also, beyond everything else, a wonderful motivational speaker. And anybody who kind of delves into your life knows how you are a real giver. You're such a marvelous philanthropist. Where did that come from, do you think?
I think a lot of it is just came from me. Another part came from example. Like Dick York, I saw him as an adult being so giving. I've always, even in, like junior high and high school, I was involved with student council and, like volunteering different places. And I volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club as a teen. So it's kind of been a huge part of my life. I don't know if it's that I want to kind of once again get rid of the bad kid actor thing, that there's such a bad rep out there that it's not true. So I don't know if I go above and beyond, but it's an important part of my life. I feel like I'm so lucky in so many ways that I feel like it's almost an obligation that I have so many things. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about in some ways it's more valuable to give the gift of time. If you can be hands-on, and when we had the fires here in Malibu, you know, as soon as they did a community service thing, I think I planted 125 trees. And so I felt great about it. So there's something that you do kind of to nourish your soul, and I just think it's important. I think everyone has just a few moments to give back.
Do you think there is such a thing as the curse of the child star, or is it just more about bad decisions?
I think it's not the curse of the former child star. I think if you made a list, like sit down and write every kid actor on the shows you watch, the movies you watch, and you kind of looked at their life, there are so many more successes and people who've done wonderful. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor, Shirley Temple, going way back, the ones who just were philanthropic and did wonderful things. But you don't hear as much about that Shirley Temple was, I think, an ambassador or something. You don't hear about that as much as someone who robs a liquor store. So people are more interested in true crime and kind of the salacious things than reading about someone who had maybe a slightly boring but very positive, productive life.
You've maintained some fabulous friendships with some great actors who've started when they were very young. Bill Mooney, Angela Cartwright, Susan Olsen, Eve Plum, and so forth. You've got this nice little community, haven't you, of fabulous people who've all done the same things and navigated their way successfully through life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where I always say that we have common ground, where we have shared life experiences and interests and things that only we have experienced. And in some ways, on a larger scale, it's like someone who was maybe an army brat and they were able to travel the world to different military bases and were constantly moving. They have a lot in common with other kids who had that experience. We're a very small group who were, working in commercials and television and going on auditions and kind of supporting families and doing things that most of the world will never experience. So when we meet other kid actors, you kind of look them in the eye, and even if you hadn't met before, it's like, hi, and it's just an instant sense of community.
And I know you're a busy bee. You do lots of things. You do lots of things for other people. But what's next for you?
I'm to the point where it's all about balance.
Mm.
It's a big balance of family and travel and friends and deciding what work, if any, I want to do. And it's kind of that juggling of, okay, I own a home, I've worked my whole life, I live at the beach, like I have all the real things that I need. And then it's figuring out, okay, but what do I want to do? And a lot of it is travel. I still haven't been to Australia after all these years. So maybe someone in Australia will see this and say, we should have Erin on a show, or we should do so. So it's kind of that figuring out what life is, doing things, learning things, going places, all that.
Before I let you go, I'm just thinking the name Tabitha is reasonably unusual, and certainly Bewitched brought her to the fore. How many Tabithas do you reckon you've met over the decades?
In my life, I had met thousands of Tabithas. People, cats, strippers, they're all named after me.
Oh, look, it has been an absolute joy to chat with you. And it's a hot day here on the Gold Coast, Queensland, sunny Australia. And I don't have a champagne glass. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could relive that television moment?
I can go like this, but I don't know if it works anymore.
Ah, it's here. Oh, Oh, Erin, cheers. That's absolutely divine.
You have a lovely evening and happy holidays.
If you love that interview, and I'm sure you did because the feedback is flooding in now, you know what you do to keep up to date with all of this? You hit the like button, of course, you hit the subscribe button that is down there, and you hit that little bell button, and that means you'll be alerted when the next interview drops on Celebrity Drop. That's why we call it Celebrity Drop. I shall catch you next time and with bells on. Bye.